for everything he has done. In his own words, independent advisor to UK government on anti-Semitism, and as he says himself, still not scared to say how it is. And that's exactly what I like about Lord Mann. No mincing of words, and he's been really courageous and really been an inspiration to our community in time of need. So Lord Mann has said that he's going to speak, and we will have some time to ask him some questions. So can I say thank you very much, and can Lord Mann please unmute himself?
I think I am unmuted.
Well done, thank you.
And can I thank you, Marie, for that overly kind introduction, and to the board for inviting me. And it's good to see so many participating online, and straight into the business. Perhaps there are some advantages to online meetings, I don't know, but I'm pleased to see so many. And the reason I'm pleased to see so many of you is not just that naturally it's more interesting to have dialogue with a larger group, but you are the Jewish Parliament. I mean, for better or for worse, like any other parliament, you're the Jewish Parliament. And I wanted to thank all of you for the leadership role that you play, because it is a leadership role in different ways in different parts of the country. And it's a crucial leadership role. And it's crucial to the success of what I'm doing. And I've one or two little suggestions for you to make. I mean, I've been appointed by the government for a 5-year term. I get a small budget. They don't pay me, but I get a small budget to assist the work I do, to advise government on anti-Semitism. My remit's specific, it's explicit, it's not wider than that. But government, I think rightly, believes that anti-Semitism is sufficiently an important issue in terms of the British way of life and government's values and standards and policies, that it requires this specific attention. And government knows, and I think you probably know as well, I will give them my advice honestly, not telling people, ministers, prime ministers, what they necessarily want to hear, but what they need to hear. Never exaggerating the problem, but never underplaying it. And my current assessment with what's happening with COVID in relation to anti-Semitism in this country is that we have the right people in the right positions, both in the Jewish community and in government, to deal with the current situation. And therefore, the threat level is always there. But I don't think anti-Semitism has risen during this lockdown period. And I've told government that. But I've warned government that the moment of highest danger is as the economy starts to go down, which it will internationally and will in this country. There will be major economic problems coming. That's inevitable. And it's at that moment, my advice to government is that people who've been hit will be looking for scapegoats. And we know the conspiracy theories, we know the history of it. We know that that's a moment of significant danger. And so I've asked government to make sure that its systems and its people are alert as that begins to happen, so that we can close it down as quickly as it arises. The advice to government in relation to the most important things, the quality of Jewish life, the safety and security of the Jewish community, in a sense is rather mundane, in that my role is to highlight problems and I rely on you to tell me if there are problems. Of course, I think I don't regard myself as an idiot. I keep alert to what's going on. But the eyes and ears across the country are you. Because you're nationwide, you're better positioned. And therefore, I am listening in. And I'm pleased to say I have a very good relationship with your leadership in order to know what your key concerns are, and you're capable of getting them to government, but I'm capable of reminding government and making sure that they don't forget their obligations in detail to act on it. And I'm confident. I've been confident over some time with the approach of governments in this country, but I'm confident with this government that when it comes to the quality of Jewish life, when it comes to the safety and security of the Jewish community, that they understand the issues, they're on board, and they're active. If they're not, they'll hear from me. And if they fail to act on hearing from me, then the world will hear my complaints. So that, in essence, is the role. There are three priorities I have where I see opportunities and problems that are going to need attention from government, but certainly not just from government. The first is education. We've had good education, better education when it comes to anti-Semitism in the last 15 years. There's more money available. We have a brilliant organisation in the Holocaust Education Trust. We have other organisations in the universities and elsewhere providing significant works. And yet we still see far right, far left and Muslim anti-Semitism are pretty commonplace. Therefore, the education is not working well enough. And we will, over the 5 years, as we all know, have fewer survivors to go around to speak out in person, face to face. And that therefore brings challenges on how the education needs to be remodeled. It's not a priority of mine in the first year, 18 months, but over the 5 years it certainly is, because there'll need to be a step change of approach. And that's going to need some considerable thought, attention and resource. I'm not complacent on that issue, and I think it would be unwise for anyone to be complacent. The second is social media. The biggest problem and our biggest failure, those of us attempting to battle anti-Semitism, racism and extremism, our biggest failure has been on social media. We've allowed the forces of extremes too much space, and I think we've all been slow, myself included, to respond efficiently. In the past, little Billy No Mates would sit in his bedroom, spewing out his hatred, and he'd be Billy No Mates. He'd be ignored by people. He'd be an irrelevance in his bedroom. But the internet has allowed Billy No Mates to connect up with Hans No Mates, Pierre No Mates, and small groups of extremists. And that's given them a feeling of empowerment. And we've been too slow to think through our response to that. We have some opportunities this year with the Internet Harms Bill, government legislation, that I think could close down some of the websites, some of the ways of operating of some of the hate mongers. And I think we need to grab that opportunity. But as well, my approach is a twin track approach. Legislation, but as well, pressure on the internet companies. And the dialogue I've had at the highest level with the White House and others in America has been in relation to the use of advertising and advertisers' pressure to clean up the internet. People do not want anti-Semite hatred alongside their brand name, and advertisers' pressure, I think, can be used to a huge extent. My third and final priority is the promotion of the IHRA definition, the IHRA Declaration on Anti-Semitism, which at last gives us an internationally defined definition of anti-Semitism, which I've long believed was crucial. Every university, every sports club, starting with every major football club, every employer needs to adopt and use the IHRA Declaration, its definition, in their work. And that is a huge priority. And it's a priority that you, with your brilliance, your contacts, your campaigning ability out there, can play a huge role in persuading the universities, the football clubs and others to adopt IRA. And I hope perhaps this afternoon we can have a little bit of discussion on how best I can be doing it, but also how best you can be doing it, because I think you've got some significant power there, and we need to draw on your expertise, your courage, your brilliance, and I don't think we're doing that enough. So perhaps that's going to be a springboard to see a lot of action across the country from Jewish communal leaders promoting the IRA definition themselves personally to their local university, their local football club, local major employers. Marie, if I end there, I'd be more than happy to hear what people have to say. And if there are questions, as you know, for better or for worse, I'll give my honest answer. But thank you for this opportunity.
Can I say thank you very, very much? We do indeed have a number of virtual hands that have gone up, but I want to say thank you for recognising the board as the Jewish Parliament and the activism of all our deputies. And I fully agree with you that we need to make sure we need to do all we can to get all the universities and football clubs to sign up to IRA. And I'm hoping the people with their virtual hands up will want to lead the way. So very, very pleased to hear that, and deputies want to be able to get involved and show you what they can do. So thank you for saying you'll take some questions. So could I please, I'm going to give some priority to people that don't usually ask a question in the order I take them. So Jonathan Rowland, would you come to the microphone, as it were, and don't forget everyone to give your name and your constituency. Jonathan.
Thank you, Marie. Jonathan Rowland, Menorah Synagogue in Manchester. Lord Mann, thank you very much, both for the time you've given up today to address us, but more importantly for the time you're going to spend over the next few years working on behalf of the Jewish community. It really is very much appreciated. As you'll know, during the Labour leadership campaign, the Board of Deputies published 10 pledges on anti-Semitism that candidates were expected to abide by, and they were asked to sign up to it. And Keir Starmer did sign up to it. However, within a month of that, there was a situation where 3 Labour MPs, including Diane Ambert and Sami Yacoub, were on a call where they gave a platform to Labour members who had been expelled or suspended for anti-Semitism. This is the 5th pledge it refers to. The board asked that anyone who gave a platform to people who had been expelled for anti-Semitism were themselves suspended. This has not happened, and there doesn't seem to have been any action taken by Keir Starmer or the Labour Party. And I just like, what do you think of this? What can be done about it? And is there any role for you or any role for us in helping to ensure that the action is taken in accordance with the board's 10 pledges?
Well, thank you, Jonathan. And well, you're doing that now. You're putting some lobbying pressure on, and appropriately so. And all of you can do that to your local. It's probably only worth contacting your local Labour MPs on this. I'm not sure other MPs will be that influential, but that would be well worth doing, because Keir Starmer's the leader. He's given that guarantee. Other candidates as well adopted the same stance. Therefore, there's unanimity. Therefore, this needs to be seen through. And a lot of people have asked me, in recent times, in recent weeks, is Keir Starmer going to deliver? I don't know is the answer. None of us knows. It's too early to say. I don't give someone the benefit of the doubt until they've actually produced the goods. However, my assessment is that the start that he's made is very promising and very good. He's been doing the right thing, making the right appointments. I was particularly pleased at his new General Secretary. It's a key role in the organisation and critical, therefore, in stamping out anti-Semitism. And I think he made the right choice in someone who I've worked with for a long time, David Evans, as the new General Secretary. That gives me a lot of confidence, because David Evans is highly, highly capable and good at attention to detail, and that's needed. But the challenges will still be needed. They'll still be needed. Some of the anti-Semites will leave the Labour Party. Some have already. Others will linger. Others will encourage and say things that are unacceptable. And so it's going to be a continuous battle. And the Jewish community needs to I think the term people use these days is hold the feet to the fire. Well, hold Labour's feet to the fire on it. And it won't be me who judges whether Keir Starmer has been successful. It will be you. You will be the judge and jury on this. I think he knows that. And I think he's decided that this is an issue he can make his mark on. And he's going to do so by cleaning up the problem. If he does, the problem doesn't go away, goes out of the Labour Party, which ethically, politically, parliamentary-wise, probably vote-wise for the Labour Party is a very good thing. It's a very good thing for Jewish activists in the Labour Party, but it means this group of anti-Semites or enablers of anti-Semitism will still be operating outside the Labour Party and probably better organised than they were 5-10 years ago. They'll be much less powerful outside, but they'll still be a threat, and we will need to keep up the pressure on them. Hence, for example, the work on social media and on the IRA declaration are so important. So keep pressuring is my advice. Don't let up. If you do so politely and intelligently as you've done, Jonathan, you're more likely to get a positive result.
Thank you for that. Right, the next questions, we've got 3 people, so subject to time, it will be in this order, deputies. Deanna Levine, Lawrence Julius and Rob Sassoon. So Deanna. I'm hoping this will be seamless.
Unmute. Yeah, there you are.
Thank you.
Hello, thank you very much. Good afternoon, Lord Mann. It's been very, very interesting to hear what you've had to say about anti-Semitism, and I'm not surprised given your very serious and heavy involvement over many years now. So my question to you is this, because you've described far right and far left and Muslim anti-Semitism, social media anti-Semitism, and so on. And I'm just wondering, I don't actually know for sure whether you are involved at all with the painfully slow lack of prosecutions that we've had, given the number of people who've been found to be, or thought to be, believed to be, or even accused to be guilty of anti-Semitism. Now, there are guidelines for the prosecution service about this issue. And I'm just wondering whether, if you haven't done it before, you've not been involved, it's something you can take on. Otherwise, if you have been involved, I'd be very interested to hear what you have to say. Thank you very much.
Marie, do you want to take the 3 together?
Yeah, yes, and can the next person also, please, can they give their constituency? No disrespect. Right, the next question, Lawrence Julius and then Rob Sassoon, please. And then Lord Mann will take your questions together. Thank you. Can you say your name and constituency?
Lawrence Julius, Holland Park Spanish and Portuguese Synagogue. Thank you, Lord Mann. I believe, like you, that the biggest drivers of anti-Semitism, demonization and delegitimization of Israel in the UK is the media in all this. Misinformation on the BBC, this community here, and we have to sort of raise our game. And I feel the board should establish a media division to really focus on this. And I'd appreciate your views on that, Lord Mann.
Can we have the next question? Right, the next question, please, from, I had Rob Sassoon, although his virtual hand has disappeared, but I'm sure Rob can come up with a question.
I'll do my best, Marie. Rob Sassoon, Spanish and Portuguese congregation as well, slightly different one to Lawrence. First of all, I'd echo my thanks to you, Lord Mann, for coming to speak to us today, and sort of hearing about what you've been up to and what you will be getting up to, working with the Jewish community. I'd also very briefly like to thank the Board of Deputies for yet again giving me a mutually enjoyable activity for me to partake with my father on Father's Day. He's sitting next to me watching his own live stream. I think I'm the only deputy, or the only person on the Board of Deputies who actually gets to come to these meetings with their father. I know there's some mother-children combinations. I think I'm the only one whose father is also on the board. So thanks to the board for that yet again. My question was rather similar to Jonathan's, the first question you had. So I'm going to broaden it out a little bit, and I'm going to ask you what you think the state of play is with regards to anti-Semitism in all of the major parties, not just the Labour Party. Obviously, the Labour Party is the one that's been sort of hogging the spotlight, as it were, in recent years. But it's not, the other parties are not completely free of anti-Semitism. So I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on those as well. Thank you.
Well, thank you for those three questions. On prosecution, I mean, I've met in the past Crown Prosecution many times at the most senior level. I haven't since starting this role full time in January, but I really only had 2 months before the lockdown. But I have already met the head of the Greater Manchester Police, the Chief Constable, and Cressida Dick as Chief Constable of the Met, and discussed with Cressida in some great detail how prosecutions can be considered, the threshold for them, whether the law is sufficient. And I mean, these are major issues. They will take up a lot of my time. There are some significant prosecutions that I expect to happen, that obviously therefore I can't speak about, and they may well be a good indicator to the future. So I'm quite optimistic in the approach being taken. But again, let's see. And of course, prosecutors can prosecute, but juries and judges decide. But I think there are some important cases that are progressing that will have real significance. And so I'm optimistic that they will go all the way. In terms of whether the board should have a media division, I'm bold enough to speak out on most things, but I'm not going to intervene on the internal structures of the Board of British Deputies. That would be foolhardy of me. What I will say is your media operation has to be good. It has to be good. I don't share criticism of the BBC in the sense that I'm thankful we have the BBC in this country. Without it, I think we'd be in desperate straits. I think the big danger are all the alternate media sources. I noted yesterday, for example, with these terrible, what appear to be murders in Reading, that it was Russian broadcasters seem to be first making all sorts of allegations. And well, I'm much more reliant on the BBC than external commentators. And with the internet, I think people skewing the news, skewing facts or making up facts or lying about facts for their own very specific agenda is the big danger that we have. And so a media and a social media division, well, how you structure is up to you, but you need to be good at this. That's my advice. You need to be very good. And if you can get even better, you'll be much stronger. Therefore, and that would go for other organizations as well. I've told you when the Israeli embassy complains to me, it's my immediate response. About time that you got your own media act together. It's rather old-fashioned, and complaining when you've got an old-fashioned media in today's 24-hour media world is a bit missing the point. And so this should be a top priority, that's for certain. How you do it's up to you, but it has to be a top priority. And on the third question, absolutely. The problem and we will see this balance back, I think. You know, Keir Starmer sorts out some of the horrendous stuff in the Labour Party. You know, a load of anti-Semites, fellow travellers and apologists leave. The Labour Party becomes normal again, welcoming of the Jewish community. Doesn't mean there'll be no anti-Semitism in the Labour Party, just as no one can say there isn't issues, and hasn't been the recent times, in the Conservative Party, the Liberal Democrats, the Scottish National Party, Plaid Cymru. They've all had problems, and I've been dealing with them directly for many years, including in recent months. We've had quite some success with the SNP, in my judgment, which I'm very pleased about. They seem to have taken a very considered view, and if they carry on in that direction, I think that's a very optimistic sign. We've had some significant positiveness from Plaid Cymru, and again, if they continue that, that's very good news. The Liberal Democrats, I mean, we've had lots of problems and some ongoing. Their structures for dealing with it are the best of any political party I've seen in this country. They have very good, and I've told them that. So you need to use them, but your structures are good. They are well thought out. And the Conservative Party, well, if it ever gets complacent, it's going to hit itself into all sorts of problems. And it has, because, you know, there are MPs, new MPs, who've said things that are totally unacceptable. And these people need to be re-educated. Sometimes they need to be disciplined. And parties need to take responsibility for their own MPs, their own councillors, their own members. It should be each party sorting out its own backyard. If they don't, the rest of us should be weighing in and forcing them to do so.
I just wanted to comment actually on the question of social media. I don't know if you're aware, but the Board of Deputies, we had this horrible incident whereby somebody threatened to bomb the board and said the only way to deal with it was bullets. We had a lot of trouble with Facebook. They initially wouldn't remove the comments because they didn't fall below their community standards. We had more representations to them, but eventually it was indeed the SNP MP, I'll come on to this in my president's statement, John Nicholson, who challenged Monica Bickett, head of product and policy and counter-terrorism at Facebook in an inquiry. But it shouldn't come to this, and we've still got work to go, because this is just simply not acceptable, and this is a major piece of work. Are there any more questions? Well, I'd like to give you a big thank you, and I know that Sheila Gewolb is going to just say a vote of thanks to you, Lord Mann, and thank you for everything that you are doing. We're all very, very grateful to you. Very, very much enjoy working with you, and I especially like that you say it as it is. So
Absolutely.
Thank you to me and Sheila.
Yeah, thank you, Marie. Yes, Lord John Mann, good to see you again. Thank you so much for giving up your time to speak to us today. We are so lucky in our community to have you as our champion. You know, you say it as it is, you're robust and forthright, and, you know, you're focused, and, you know, you don't stand for any nonsense. I've heard you speak many times, and we're really, really pleased that you've helped us with supporting us with your advocacy. And I take on board, I think we all do, what you say over the next few years, what we need to do as deputies, you know, to promote the IHRA, to be aware of the social media. The board staff are amazing at monitoring all this. You know, we do have our own internal structure to do this, and the education. I've been involved for many years on going out and spreading the word, but we need to really focus a lot more on this. So thank you again, and stay well. And it's been good to see you. Thank you.
Thank you.
And of course, you're very welcome. We'd very much enjoy if you would like to remain with us. Please, you don't have to go, but as you will. But thank you. So just moving on, deputies. A very sensible question has been asked by Brian Godalia. He wants to know why can't we have the chat on throughout the proceedings today, and this can be something again for feedback next time, but somebody here, one of the honorary officers in a chat room, he was subjected to some obscenities which unfortunately couldn't be deleted, so I think there are some issues potentially with security, so it was decided that we wouldn't have the chat on this occasion. So I'm very, very sorry about that. So can we come on please now to the next item on the agenda, the President's statement and the Executive Committee report. So can we take the President's statement first? So can I welcome, we've got some new deputies. I know you can't clap, but perhaps you can wave your hands. I'll just tell you who they are. Howard Ross from the Zionist Federation, Gideon Leibowitz, LDY Netzler, David Rosen at Stanmore and Cannons Park Synagogue, Leora Malki Epstein from Wheatsoe, Judy Mizrahi from Mill Hill. So welcome to new deputies. We're looking forward to, I'll give you a wave as well, we're looking forward to seeing you in person very, very soon. I also would like to say a massive thanks to Esther Offenberg, who's been the fantastic president of UJS, and time has gone by so quickly. Next week she's going to be handing over to one of our very own deputies as well, James Harris, and Esther should be here on the call. Could she please unmute, because I would like Esther to say just a couple of words, because she does deserve thanks for everything that she's done. So are you here, Esther?
Hi, I'm here.
Very well done, thank you.
Hi, yes, I just also want to say a quick thank you. It's been a great pleasure and honor serving Jewish students this year, all the way into a pandemic, and it's been great to work with you all. So just a huge thank you from me, and obviously great hatzlacha to James Harris in continuing the presidency. He'll do a great job. And as you all know, I mean, I love the Jewish community, so I'll never be far, and if I can ever be of any help, be in touch.
Thank you. And can I just remind people, thank you, Esther, when you want to ask questions to use your virtual hand. So when I come on to the President's statement, I can see two virtual hands. We've got Louise Elman and Mary Rayner Lee. But just before, thank you very much for that, Esther. And we're also looking forward to working with you in the future, and also with James. Now we've got lots more virtual hands, so I better just carry on. Can I also say a big mazel tov to Edwin Shuker on the birth of his grandson? That's amazing news. Louise and Jerome Friedman, they celebrated their diamond wedding anniversary. Sally Strauss, the birth of her grandson, and Ruth Friedman, who was named Eshet Ha'il this Shavua, and her speech on the Sunday meeting at Zoom has actively promoted the Board of Deputies. So thank you for that. And unfortunately, we do have condolences as well to Mary Rayner Lee on the loss of her brother, Maurice Minsky on the loss of his mother, and to our very own Bernice Black on the loss of her brother-in-law. So thank you. Can I just point out some pieces of the President's statement before I come on to the now increasingly a number of questions. The first thing that I want to say is that the whole community, we were absolutely shocked by the cold-blooded, vile, racist killing of George Floyd last month. And I said at the time that we need to show absolute solidarity against any type of hate and vile racism. At the meeting that we had with Keir Starmer on Friday, that was one of the first things that we said as a community, that we wanted to express our solidarity with Black people in the face of this terrible experience of racism on both sides of the Atlantic. So in response to this, I'm very proud to say that the Board of Deputies has announced its intention to form a commission on racial inclusivity in the Jewish community, so we make sure that prejudice is banished. And this is going to be chaired by the very eminent journalist who's already giving lots of interviews about this, Stephen Bush, and we are very, very grateful to him. So as a very first step, we are inviting Black British Jews and other Jews of colour to come forward to give evidence. This can be anonymous if they want to do that, and then we're going to be able to build a picture of what is happening. And then we're going to move on to the next step. We're going to talk to our partners in the synagogues, the schools, the youth movements, and we anticipate that after about 6 months, we'll be able to provide a report with recommendation. So I think this is something that's very, very positive. And we do invite anyone that's listening, British Black Jews and Jews of colour and any others who are interested in participating, to contact Anthony Silcoff at anthony.silcoff@bod.org.uk. And I absolutely say that this is some of the most important work that we've done as a community. I did want to address you with my concerns about Facebook, which I partly covered with Lord Mann, because the present situation cannot be allowed to continue. There is no redress virtually against Facebook, and it's taken, and we're very grateful to SNP MP John Nicholson having to force some sort of acceptance that when we are told, you know, bomb the board and bullets, that was not an appropriate response. So as you're aware, we are all part of the European Jewish Congress and the World Jewish Congress, and I intend to actually take this up with our colleagues around the world to see what we can do to actually put pressure on these media giants, because we're not the only organisation or community that have got these concerns, and we simply have to be able to do something about it, and we can't just let this lie. Moving on to Labour. We had a very positive meeting on Friday, our communal meeting, which we put out a statement on Friday. We had with us, as well as myself, Gillian and Phil from the Board of Deputies. We had our colleagues, Jonathan Goldstein, the new interim Joint Chief Exec, Claudia, and colleagues also from the CST, Mark Gardner. So congratulations to both of them, the CST's excellent new Chief Executive. And we also had representation from JLM, Mike Katz and Peter Mason. So we had a very, very good meeting, and it is going to take time, as Lord Mann has said, to build that trust. It's a good start, but we're going to be measuring what happens by output. And it's going to be very, very difficult to deal with the culture of the party. And this is going to take a long time. There's not going to be any magic change, but it is a good start. And we're all waiting to see the result of the EHRC inquiry and how that is going to be implemented. So there has been progress, but we're going to meet again in October, because we want to make sure that we have a timeline so we know when cases that are outstanding for disciplinary action are going to be dealt with. We want to know how the efforts to detoxify the poison in the party is going to be monitored. We want to see what action plan there is from the EHRC inquiry, and we sincerely hope this is going to be published in full. And we want to see how the disciplinary process, which Keir Starmer said agreed should be independent, how that's going to actually work. But we want to give credit where credit is due. So it is a cautious and good start, but it's very, very much work in progress. So it's not business as usual, but a very, very good start. In relation to Israel, I think we will have all have agreed that there's been a lot of impassioned opinion and debate in Israel, the UK, and around the world. And there are some who've called on the Board of Deputies to oppose potential annexation. There are those who've said, regardless of their personal views, the Board of Deputies should not be speaking out. And as the representative body, where we are responsible for representing British Jews with a very wide range of opinion, we have continued to emphasise from the Board of Deputies our belief in a negotiated two-state solution, and we don't take a position on which Israeli towns should be on either side of the border. Now, I do believe in debate, and I do believe that the board should be a place where people, where Jews of all opinions should be able to express those opinions freely. It's because there is not consensus in our community, and I think I'm probably the first president that's acknowledged that there isn't consensus. It will come up in the report from Sheila. One deputy has now submitted a motion, so I'm just going to read you the motion, and it is as follows. This Board of Deputies reaffirms its support for bilateral negotiations towards a two-state solution leading to a secure Israel alongside a viable Palestinian state. Any unilateral step by either side will be damaging to renewed efforts to restart peace negotiations. And this motion has been submitted by Tal Ofer, seconded by Richard Cohen, and it has passed through the international division. We do have a lot of work on our agenda in relation to trying to get through all of the issues that we're facing as a result of the pandemic. We are very overwhelmed in all the work we're doing. We've got huge changes going through for the Constitution, and I'm looking at finding the best way that we can have a debate on this motion, which has now gone through the international division. So I also think it needs planning. I would like to have proposers, seconders, and materials put out before we actually have the debate. And I hope that UJS might actually be able to help us organise this debate. So what I'm discussing with the honorary officers, and I'm sure people will have their views as we talk today, as we're a democracy, is having a special meeting in August for this purpose. So I wanted to just confirm that motion had now been put in. So I think I would like to have a chance perhaps to take some questions now. So I'm going to take them in the order which they are. And can you please give your name and your constituency? But before I do that, I can see that we've got Jonathan Arkush has got his hand up. So can we please have past President Jonathan Arkush? You've got 2.5 minutes. You can either ask a question or make a statement. And welcome to you, Jonathan. It's very good to have you online this morning.
Thank you, President. I wonder whether those who have been so vociferous and putting forward motions have appreciated the mismatch between a campaign to influence the democratic character of the board and their apparent disrespect for the democracy that is the state of Israel. I've never understood the clarion calls for British Jews either to criticize the government of Israel or to urge it to adopt one policy or another. Siren voices on annexation fail to respect the simple fact that Israel is an independent democratic state. Moreover, it is a state that now has a national unity government. The policy and eventual decisions of the government will be taken by the Prime Minister, the alternate Prime Minister, Mr. Gantz, who was the leader of the opposition, and by the cabinet drawn from a wide variety of political parties. And that government commands, of course, the majority of elected members of the Knesset. So what right is prayed in aid by those loud voices among us? What special knowledge do they have? What special position do they occupy? And what do they know about politics and security in the Middle East that those in Israel don't know better? Surely it is a type of arrogance that underlies calls for the democracy of Israel to be subverted and disrespected. So, Madam President, I think it is high time for those raising their voice to adopt the self-denying ordinance that the great majority of us apply to ourselves. If you nevertheless want to have your say in advocating or opposing policies in Israel, I say make Aliyah, contribute to the country, pay your taxes, do military service, exercise your vote. But while you're citizens of this country and live here, The only appropriate course is to respect and support the democracy of Israel, of which we are so rightly proud. I'm therefore in opposition to any motions, whether they want to support or criticize any particular policy of the State of Israel. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. And you are also well within your time. Thank you. That's very appreciated, and I fully respect all of your comments. And as you will be aware, the board has not taken a position on annexation, but we have a lot of people who've got a lot of different views, and I have to, as a representative body, make sure that people have the space to actually have those viewed airs. So can I just ask, the next person patiently waiting was Louise Ellman. Are you there, Louise?
Yes.
Thank you.
Unmuted. Louise Ellman, Jewish Labour Movement. And I'd like to urge the board to keep pressing the Labour Party on dealing with the evil of anti-Semitism. The problem is far from resolved, although it's very encouraging to see what's happened up to now. I'd also like to very much welcome the statement made by the board, a very strong statement, following the racist murder of George Floyd in America. I think it was a strong statement and full of emotion. That was exactly the right thing to do. I welcome the setting up of the Commission on Racial Inclusivity in the Jewish community. Stephen Bush is an excellent choice for chair. He's very knowledgeable, he's sensitive, he's independent. And I think that he has all the attributes that are needed. I'd like to ask, will efforts be made to make sure that evidence and information can be given from people of all ages? So I think it's very important that people are encouraged to contribute their own experiences in this very, very important area. And I'd like to have an assurance that that will be done. Thank you.
Thank you, Louise. Can I just say on that one, absolutely, people of all ages, any Black Jews of colour, any Black Jews, and particularly all ages, absolutely essential that people come forward, and we will be giving a lot of publicity to the Commission, and we'll do all that we can. So thank you for that, and also very much agree with you that we are having a long way to go before anti-Semitism can be said to be resolved. All we can say is we've got a cautious good start, so thank you for that. On the list of people wanting questions, I'm going to give precedence first of all to our new deputy, Howard Ross, then Mary Rainier Lee, and then Amos Schonfield. So Howard Ross, new deputy, welcome to the board, and thank you for speaking on your first occasion. Can you unmute, please, and say your constituency?
Okay. If I unmuted.
Thank you. Welcome.
Okay. Howard Ross from the Zionist Federation. I was very pleased to hear what Jonathan Arcus said, because that was very much what I was going to say about whether it is helpful for the Board of Deputies to take any position about the activities of the democratically elected Israeli government. But I also understand what you were saying, Marie, about allowing that people have lots of different views about this whole issue, and maybe it's a good thing that we have a debate at some time in the future, so long as it is properly organised. Let me just get that off. Okay. The only point I really wanted to make about that debate that we do have in the future is I was listening to the resolution that's being put forward, and there was a talk, there was a mention of being against any unilateral steps, which I assume was a reference to Israel taking unilateral steps so far as this annexation or proposed annexation, if indeed it goes ahead, is concerned. All I just really want to say was that when we come to the debate, it takes unilateral steps can be taken by two sides. You have to remember that, of course, that the Palestinians for over many, many years have refused to negotiate with Israel, and particularly in relation to the Trump plan. So one could say that that itself was a unilateral step, not just what some people think of Israel's actions. Okay, that's it.
Thank you. And just to explain to everybody, we will get literature out in due course that a motion has been received, and according to our constitution, standing order 17 applies. So the motion will come to plenary, and then I will be in touch with everybody further. So that's part of our constitution. But thank you very much, Howard. Could Mary Rainier Lee and then Amos, and then I've got a queue of other people wanting to ask questions as well. So I would do my very best to get everybody there. Thank you. Mary.
Thank you very much. First of all, I want to thank Lord Mann, who I think is still in earshot, for what he said earlier on. And just to remind you, I am from Western Marble Arch, it's my constituency. I just also want to remind people what we're here for, and I sometimes wonder if people remember that rather than bringing their own politics through the door. We're here to protect the interests and religious customs of Jews and the Jewish community. We're not here to make politics. I leave mine at the door, although sometimes I have to respond to other people's ideas which are contrary to mine, because I feel you can't let them unresponded to. We are riven by politics, both party politics and Israel politics in the board, and I think that is a dreadful waste of time and energy. If you have political views, you should express them through a political party or other campaign that you wish to join. We are united if we stand together in a particular view, but we're divided and fall if we start having different views on Israel or indeed any other matter. And we need a leadership role here. And for that, I congratulate you, Mari, for your stand so far, for the loud voices which are trying to make you go one way or the other on the issue of Israel and what it chooses to do. It is a foreign country. I think, as one of the earlier speakers said, if you want to take advantage of having a voice, you should join up for the army, and after that you should have the right to vote for having made Aliyah. I think that we should not campaign in the name of the Board of Deputies at any stage as individuals. I think the board should stick to what you have said, Mari, unity to support the State of Israel as in the Constitution, but no indication of whether we think one way or the other in terms of what Israel should do next. That is a matter for Israel only. And thank you again for those of you who've stood out against the loud voices demanding that you split the community by saying one thing because the other half won't agree. Thank you.
Thank you. Absolutely. I absolutely recognise that there is division and do not wish to split the community. Could we next please have Amos followed by Karen Newman? Amos Schoenfeld, please.
Thank you, Marie. I'm just going to let the ambient noise pass for a moment. Having a meeting outside. There we go. Amos Schoenfeld, I am the deputy for Yachad. I asked in February during the plenary what the Board of Deputies will do as diaspora partners of the State of Israel to defend the onslaught facing the two-state solution, which is the only resolution to the conflict and occupation that is supported by a plurality of Israelis and Palestinians and by 3/4 of British Jews. The only answers I received, and that has not changed, were platitudes and meaningless slogans. We all know that part of the board's stated mission is to advance Israel's security, welfare, and standing, and annexation will do irrevocable damage to these pillars. Hundreds of former Israeli generals have said it. Hundreds of international legal scholars have said it. 42 of the community's leaders, thinkers, and philanthropists have said it, in support of 1,000 community members and 43 deputies. Our commitment to democracy, justice, and freedom is at stake, but our leadership has their head in the sand. So when will the board start to take this seriously?
Thank you, Amos. That's very concise. I want to absolutely assure you the board has taken it seriously, and I've taken great steps to explain the board's position. And as you can hear, just from listening to other people, there are many and varied views. And I said that I really want to listen to everybody's views, and there is not consensus, and there really is a huge difference of opinion in the community, which is why the board has not taken a position. But I want to thank you for what you've got to say, and I'm sure you will want to take part of the debate going forward. Could I move please next, and please say your name and constituency, Karen Newman, and then please Gary Mond, and then Toby Coonan. Karen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Karen Newman from the Liberal Jewish Synagogue in London. It seems to me to be manifestly obvious that this is one of the most divisive issues that British Jewry faces. And I think, therefore, it's really important to look at this through the lens, not of our own views, but of what is the Board of Deputies there to do. And it seems to me that the board is there to represent British Jewry to other people who are not Jewish in Britain, who may need our advice or whom we may need to reach. Any view or policy that we arrive at with regard to Israel is obviously going to majorly hack off a significant minority. And the closer we are to 50-50 split, the bigger the minority that's going to be sufficiently hacked off and very likely very vocally hacked off. And we have to remember that there are some people who enjoy the spectacle of disunity within our community. So the critical question is, what do we do now in order, as Amos just said, to show that we take this issue seriously? I remember an intervention that Lee Lewis made the last time we discussed a major report of the attitude of British Jews towards the State of Israel, which is in 2015. He said that the report showed that in general, the British Jews have overwhelming support for the existence of the State of Israel, exasperation with some of the things that the Palestinian leadership does, and deep anxiety with some of the actions of the Israeli government. And he said he thought that probably was a reasonable barometer of British Jewish attitudes as a whole. So what I think we really need to do is have a meeting, a special meeting, not a debate with time constraints where people can only speak for 2.5 minutes, but a proper meeting or a conference dedicated directly to this specific issue. And I believe that you, Marie, have suggested this before, that we could maybe have it chaired by somebody very eminent like Louise Ellman, have somebody putting the case forth so that we might learn, have somebody saying the kinds of things that Amos has said based on research, so that then instead of shedding a lot of heat on this, we might shed some light. So all I wanted to say is that I'm in huge support of the proposal of taking this out of a board plenary meeting where we will have time constraints and have a specific dedicated conference with eminent speakers planned in advance, where we can really show that what we want is informed deputies going out to the communities knowledgeable about this issue. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Karen. Just to confirm to everyone, we do have a motion, so I do have to have plans to have the motion heard if that's continued, although there could be various counter motions by the time we get to a hearing. But I'm glad to see that there is support to want to have a separate meeting, a separate board meeting, so that we can have that discussion, and we can do it on a very planned an educational basis, as well as having the discussion. So thank you. We'll take that offline, and we will come back to you. So Gary Mond, and then Toby, and I'm just asking whether or not it's possible to extend the board meeting by about 15 minutes, because I've still got another 10 hands that are raised, and I really want to do my best to enable everyone to be heard. So thank you. Gary, can you please say your name and constituency? Thank you.
Gary Mond, JNF UK. And my comments relate to your earlier remarks about the tragic and utterly sickening murder of George Floyd. I think there's a world of difference between us empathising with the concept that Black Lives Matter, on the one hand, and supporting the group that bears the same name. Of course, I'm absolutely sure that all of us agree that Black Lives Matter, as do Asian lives, African lives, Jewish lives, and all lives. But it's imperative that we take a long, hard look at those groups who seek to leverage support from the tragic death of George Floyd for their own twisted goals. Why is it that at some demonstrations organised by the Black Lives Matter group, the actions and chants degenerate into anti-Semitism? In Paris last week, the placards of the event organised by Black Lives Matter had virulently anti-Israel slogans, and guess what? The Place de la République in Paris was ringing with the chants of dirty Jews. and at an earlier event in Los Angeles, Jewish shops were destroyed, synagogues were vandalized, and the statue of Raoul Wallenberg, the famous Swedish diplomat who saved thousands upon thousands of Jewish lives during the Holocaust, was daubed with anti-Semitic graffiti. And this morning, we read on Facebook that the news that the police are now investigating calls from supporters of the radical group Black Lives Matter to shoot and behead those who work for the group Campaign Against Anti-Semitism. Such a threat should serve as a wake-up call to all of us. In summary, Madam President, no Jewish group of any type, not least this Board of Deputies, should give any support or have any connection with or meetings with the Black Lives Matter group. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I say in response to that, the fact that there are concerns with the organisation Black Lives Matter does not detract in any way from supporting the action to be taken and the absolute outrage to be expressed at the murder of George Floyd, which is why we want to have the board's inclusivity commission, because that is a vile racist murder. So I just want to make that clear, but thank you for what you're saying. And we did not hashtag any organisation when we gave our support, so thank you for that. I'm going to come on please to Toby, and I want to thank Toby. I was just going to come on to this afterwards. I was reviewing a couple of months ago my board manifesto, and one of my things that I said that I wanted to do when I was board president was to launch a youth engagement strategy, including the establishment of an annual youth plenary session. And I'm very grateful to Edwin Shuker. He's going to take this forward with Jake, who's been working on it. And I want to thank Toby because he's on the steering committee, and we're very much looking forward to getting the youth plenary off the ground. And Edwin will cover that more in his speech. But Toby, over to you.
Thank you, Madam President, for your kind words. Toby Kenyon, Deputy for Noam Masorti Youth and first-time speaker. Firstly, I hope you're all safe and well in these incredibly difficult times. However, like many deputies, I've been concerned by the board's response to the announcement of Israel's current settlements minister, Tzipi Hatovli, as Mark Regev's successor as ambassador to the UK. For those not aware, Hatovli, a self-defining religious right-winger, has a well-documented history of anti-Palestinian racism and displays of contempt towards diaspora communities, progressive Zionists, and advocates of a two-state solution. Yet the board's stance so far, to the best of my knowledge, has simply been that we will be delighted to work with the next Israeli ambassador. Hatovli has even attacked the Board of Deputies directly, criticising our 2019 Jewish Manifesto's support of a two-state solution with the line that an organisation that supports the establishment of a Palestinian state is clearly working against Israeli interests. As the representative for a dynamic community of young Masorti Jews, I'm also concerned by her statements from a conference in New York that non-Orthodox streams of Judaism choose to take the outside skin of Judaism, the customs and tradition, and to empty it of content from within, instilling liberal values that have no connection to Judaism. As a Jewish student who tries to make the case for a state of Israel on campus and to reach out to pro-Palestinian campaigners to build consensus towards peace, I'm also concerned by her references to Israeli human rights activists as war criminals and Palestinians as thieves of history. Even if the board won't stand against annexation or the occupation more generally, why won't it at least stand up for and represent non-Orthodox British Jews, the 850 signatories so far of the Na'amod open letter, Jewish peers, senior rabbis, or even its own policy in Israel, and either oppose or publicly voice concern over this dangerous pick for Israeli ambassadors to the UK? Surely that is well within the remit of a diaspora communal organisation. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, and very well spoken. The ambassador is the choice, as you will know, of the Israeli government, and the Board of Deputies will be working with her. She, I'm sure, will be hearing all of the issues and concerns, and may even be watching this live stream as to what has been said. And it's fair to say there has been quite a lot of objection, and those objections she will need to listen to those, and will have to become part of the community, and we can't actually deal with her yet because her appointment has not yet been confirmed. But as I'm sure, as you would expect, the Board of Deputies will be gracious in relation to the appointment of the ambassador, and we will be raising concerns directly with her about those issues that do need to be raised. But I think we should all welcome her, even if people feel there is a big difference of opinion. And I want to reassure everybody, particularly progressive Jews, I will be advocating fully for the rights of all progressive Jews, and that is not going to change one iota. But that was an excellent speech and a fantastic first speech, and I want to thank you for that, for putting it across so well. Can we now go on, please? Can we hear from Nathan Baroda and then Robert Festenstein?
Thank you very much, Madam President. And I was going to ask a very similar question to Toby, but I couldn't put it anywhere near as eloquently. You raised the idea about being gracious to Sipi Hotaveli. I'm not sure we can be gracious to someone who holds these views. And I think we should be quite outspoken as a community against this appointment, because I think it would be deeply, deeply damaging. So what work can the board do to represent the 800 Jews who signed the petition against her appointment?
Thank you for your question. As it's been put so eloquently by Toby, the prospective ambassador has also written expressing alarm about the Board of Deputies manifesto. We will continue to advocate for a two-state solution, and we will continue to advocate for the rights of progressive Jews, but that doesn't mean it can't be done with graciousness. What we want and what we consider we should be putting to the ambassador is not going to change, and I'm sure that she will also be delighted to listen to our views. But at the moment, she's not been yet confirmed. But when she is, there will be a number, I'm sure, of very active discussions. But I don't want anybody in the community to think that the stance of the Board of Deputies is going to change. And we will have to wait till she is confirmed in post and arrives later this summer. And I understand what you're all putting forward, and I really take on board, and I'm listening to what you're saying and to those who have signed the letter. Thank you. Robert Festenstein. Name and constituency, please.
Yes, Robert Festenstein, Prestwich Hebrew Congregation. Marie, good afternoon. You'll be relieved to hear this is nothing to do with any of the previous questions. In your report, you make reference to a new member of staff as the new Eco Synagogue project manager, an externally funded position. Can you tell us who was kind enough to fund this for the board?
I will have to ask their permission to do that. So I'm not ducking the question, but I will write back to you about who wants to be funding that. So I will ask if they don't mind, and I will let you know. But the board is only paying for a very small percentage of that role, and it's viewed as a very important role for the board, and it's widely supported by many members of the community. And I think that we should be proud of our social action, and I hope that you wish Andrea well in her future role. So I shall come back to you. Thank you on that one. Thank you. Right, can we have next, please, Ben Wright and Ruth Hart. Ben.
Hello.
Name and constituency.
So Ben Wright from the Liberal Jewish Synagogue.
Thank you.
Following the racist abuse of a Muslim MP by a Conservative Party activist last week, the Muslim Council of Britain said the Conservative Party must reflect and consider why it chooses to ignore widespread concerns about its institutional Islamophobia. If a truly independent inquiry is not enacted with its recommendations implemented, there will be a drip feed of these stories for a long time to come. As many communities and minority groups were to the Jewish community in response to anti-Semitism in the Labour Party, will the board be an ally to the British Muslim community today and publicly call for an independent inquiry into Islamophobia within the Conservative Party?
Thank you. I want to say that the board is a very active partner with the Muslim community, as it is. One of the first things when we went into lockdown was in relation to the coronavirus bill, where with Naz Shah and with the government, we advocated for a change in the law because it might have been the case that there were mandatory cremations. We do a huge amount of Muslim support work. I've attended lots of iftars, and our faith work and cooperation really is excellent. And I've spent a lot of time, as has my predecessor Jonathan Arkush, visiting mosques and cementing that relationship. The Conservative Party obviously need to look at that very, very carefully. That is a concern. But I want to say, if people are trying to say that this is something that's comparable to the Labour Party, it isn't, because anti-Semitism in the Labour Party has run deep into the culture. And there are instances of concern, which I'm sure the Conservative Party are going to look at. So I'm going to wait and hear from the Conservative Party, as I'm sure we all are, what's going to happen in relation to that issue. But it really can't be compared to Labour anti-Semitism. The numbers involved are not the same, but there should not be racism in any party. That includes the Conservative Party, the Liberal Democrats. No political party should allow racism, and they should all have robust procedures for dealing with it. So it's a fresh allegation, so I'm going to wait and see what happens. And I think it's a very good question, and we have to look and see what the outcome of that is and what action is actually taken by the party. Because in my experience in relation to previous complaints, and I have had some over the years, action has been taken swiftly. But I want to thank you for that question. It's a very fair and very relevant question. Thank you. Ruth Hart. And sorry, I'm not meaning to cut anybody off. I'm just trying to get everybody in to be able, because I've now got, I'm not going to get to be able to answer everyone's questions. I'm going to do my best, and it's going to be very tight on the divisional reports. Ruth.
Ruth Hart, Bournemouth Reformed Synagogue. Do I understand correctly that the remit of the Commission into experiences of Jews of colour, has that been extended to Jews of all minorities, for example, Mizrahi or Edeni, who have also been underrepresented in our leadership? And are we also sending messages of solidarity to other Jewish communal organisations, for example, CRIF in Paris, in the light of racism that happened at public demonstrations in this past week?
Thank you for your question. Jews of colour clearly includes Mizrahi Jews. It's not the question that it's been extended. It was always there, because otherwise it would have just said Black Jews. So yes, it applies in relation to Mizrahi Jews, and we've had questions before about age, and it really should apply to Jews of any age. And it's very important that people come forward, and we're finalising the terms of reference, but please rest assured that it is. Of course, we condemn any sort of violence and anti-Semitism amongst the most terrible incidents around the world. We're also looking at what's happened in Reading, closer to home, where 3 people have tragically lost their lives, and 3 others are very, very ill in hospital as a result of a terrorist attack here. But that is nothing to do with the Commission here. That is a separate issue, but it's open to Black Jews and to Jews of colour. Absolutely, very important. Thank you. Could I come on, please, to Denise Lester and then Annabelle Daish? Thank you. If you can be as quick as possible, I will get more people on. Doing my best.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you for arranging for Lord Mann to speak to us and with us. Several questions that flow. One, I'd welcome some indication, and I think it would be helpful if the board had some indication of the scope of his inquiry and during his term, and also if it's staged, how we can work with and assist him in his work. And the second point is, I entirely agree with Jonathan Arkush and your own stance on behalf of the board in relation to the annexation question. And I'd like to actually invite, if this is at all possible, those that have proposed the motion to withdraw it, because the natural consequence is that we're being forced into voting for the motion. Now, I, as a deputy of Southampton Synagogue and as a British Jew, do not want to be engaged in taking a position either way. And particularly in the time of the pandemic, there is not the on the ground soundings that are available that perhaps would be otherwise the case, and indeed were otherwise the case in past motions. So I'd like this to be closed down. And so I'd invite the formal withdrawal. In relation to the issue of the commission, I'm grateful to the board. It shows the maturity of development of our community. The issue is going to be, I think, in terms of reaching out to those Jews of colour and Black Jews who are not affiliated, and how one does it through the media and indeed the use of social media in due course. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, we can see we are truly a democracy, and the wide variety of views that we've got here, there really is no one consensus. Now, I know that we don't have the chat facility between us, but I have had some feedback, and I just want to make it clear in relation to Black Lives Matter. I want to make it clear that every life matters, and there's no suggestion that other lives do not matter. They absolutely do. And our response to racism is to absolutely make it clear that Black lives do matter, and this vile racism is simply unacceptable in society. And we show absolutely solidarity with the Black community, and we feel so strongly that is why we're making sure that we've got this commission into Black inclusivity, so that the British community here does its bit. So I want to make that absolutely clear. There's no suggestion that other lives do not matter. They absolutely do. Could I please have Mervyn Smith, please, and David Nyfield? Thank you. Hello.
Hello, yeah. Thank you very much. I wanted to acknowledge, first of all, Jonathan Arkush's address, which I found very, very clear, succinct, and explained the position regarding the possible annexation. I am very concerned, irrespective of how well the young people are expressing their concerns with regard to what may be or may not be annexation. However, there has been nothing within any matter or written matter that they have put forward any understanding of what the historical position is, and that is terribly important. I've heard nothing with regard to history or my experience of meetings with Yachad, where there is an understanding with regard to history. The young gentleman who spoke otherwise has not mentioned anything with regard to the history, and therefore we've got a variety of expressions showing what they believe could happen, but nobody actually expressing, because it is not even a matter of press experience at this point in time, as to what may or may not be the position in regarding annexation, whether it will be large, small, or conceivably not at all. And I do go along with Denise Lester's comments that I think it is far too soon to consider anything where nobody is going to have full knowledge of any matter. If there is an unacceptable annexation that the communities found, then that is the time to make an expression of our views. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I'm going to apologise in a minute because Annabelle was waiting. So I'm very sorry, David, if David can come first. Thank you for that. Can I just give you also some feedback on the question about who is funding the Eco Synagogue Post? Because I'm told that I can say that. The post is being funded by Rabbi Jonathan Wittenberg and the New North London Synagogue. But thank you also, Mervyn, for your views. Annabelle, I'm very sorry that I misplaced you. Would you like to speak? Could you unmute, please, and say your constituency? Thank you.
Hello, Annabelle Datchers, Aleph Synagogue, Northwestern Synagogue Reform. I would like to share my absolute horror at the death of George Floyd. What's his surname? Anyway, I obviously was shocked and horrified by that. The group Black Lives Matter, in their mission statement that they put up, is not all that it seems. It appears, as Gary Mond said, to be a fascist kind of organisation, and it's not all it seems. And so I don't mean fascist, I mean Marxist. It's not all it seems, and I would be very careful about joining up with it, even though of course Black Lives Matter, as do everyone else, and that's my position.
Well, thank you. Well, look, there are many, many issues in society, and Black lives do matter too. And we want to make sure that Black people are not treated differently. And the George Floyd issue, you know, this terrible, vile, racist murder clearly really highlighted that. And we want to make sure at home that the Jewish community is fully inclusive for all. It's not just Ashkenazi Jews, but all Jews, whether they're Black Jews and Jews of colour. So thank you very much for that. David Nyfield, please.
Madam President.
Rabbi, thank you.
The murder of George Floyd was a horrific crime, and it is right that the police officer should face the full force of the law. We have seen both peaceful protests and violence in the name of racial justice. However, is there any concern from the board that with each mention of Black Lives Matter, further legitimacy is being given to an organization that openly supports BDS? Why was there no comment on the anti-Semitic desecration of shuls and Jewish property during the riots? And secondly, closer to home, what will be the role of deputies in framing the terms of reference for the commission? And will the findings be brought to the plenary for discussion? Thank you.
Thank you very much. A number of deputies have expressed concern about the organisation itself, Black Lives Matter, but I want to make it absolutely clear, as I think I've just said before. The statement Black Lives Matter was never intended to suggest that other lives do not matter. It was a response to racism, which saw Black people being particular targets of regular police brutality. And some people feel, and yes, it may have been insensitive to say all lives matter because it detracts from Black people's concerns, and Black people's concerns, they should not be detracted from because it belittles their call for equality. So the fact that there are concerns being made about this organisation, we must make sure that we play our part to stop all of this people trying to use it as a reason, if it's been suggested, to detract from the call for equality, because there absolutely needs to be. And I want to make it clear, and this is the terrible response to the vile racist attack that we've seen, and you can see from that the sheer police brutality that has happened in relation to George Floyd, and the board wants to play its part. The terms of reference are being finalised. Of course, the terms of reference will be published, and yes, the commission certainly is going to be public and come back to the board, because there's no point in having a private commission, because if there's a private commission, it doesn't mean that anything is going to change. And I absolutely hope that all deputies are going to be very supportive of the board's commission, and that there shouldn't be any objection to it, because some people are concerned that the organisation Black Lives Matter may have connections with BDS, because we're not supporting an organisation. We're actually dealing with the terrible inequalities that exist in the Black community, to make sure that we play our part in making sure that people are treated equally and fairly, and not subjected to race brutality from the police, for example. But thank you very much. I'm going to have a few questions, and we're going to then have to, I'm sorry, move on, because we haven't had the divisional reports. So I've got Adrian Cohen and Laura Marks, please. Can you unmute, Adrian?
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, sorry, in some respects you've taken the wind out of my sails. I was going to say that the whole point about solidarity with people of colour is that it's addressing the inequalities in our society, and the fact that Black people are more likely to suffer from violent attack, police brutality than white people. So there is a danger when people say all lives matter, that they're really trivializing the experience of Black people and not addressing the inequality. It's like someone said, if there's a house on fire and you call for the fire engine to put the fire out, you don't point to another house which isn't on fire and say that all houses matter. It's the house which is on fire which needs to be addressed. And it's particularly acute for us as Jews, because we were very sensitive when, for example, Jeremy Corbyn would only ever refer to anti-Semitism in the context of anti-Semitism and all other kinds of racism, because rightly we saw that as deflecting from our concerns. It's a form of whataboutery. It sort of dilutes the concerns that we specifically had. So likewise, we shouldn't be doing that when it comes to anti-Black racism, where Black people are disproportionately targeted for violent attack and suffer other forms of inequality, which white people don't. So I think as a body, we should be very careful not to deflect or become part of a narrative that seeks to do that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and I obviously agree with what you've said. I've just been given some technical feedback. Could you please make sure if you're called that your video is on, because we weren't supposed to have anybody on the board plenary for security reasons if your video isn't showing. So if you've turned it off, thank you for that. Could you please turn it back on? Laura Marks.
Hi, yes, thank you, Marie. Just a very similar point to Adrian, but I want to take it one step further, which is that I completely agree that this business about all lives matter. Of course they matter, all lives matter, but we were apoplectic when Corbyn kept saying, I don't accept anti-Semitism or any other form of racism. And us keeping on talking about other forms of racism is quite offensive. And so I completely agree with Adrian. And I'd like to take it one step further, which is to encourage the board in this review, which I understand this commission looking at racism within our community, to look not just at racism within Jews against Black or non-white Jews, but actually to look at racism within the Jewish community against Black people generally. There's plenty of racism in the Jewish community against Black people. And I think that to hold a commission and not look at the point more broadly is a really wasted opportunity. So I urge you to look at racism within the Jewish community against Black people specifically, because it's a really big issue. And we need to be able to hold our hands up honestly and say, we have looked at this issue of racism against Black people within the Jewish community. We have understood it better and we're going to address it. In about the 20 seconds I have left, I just want to raise a completely different issue, which is, could we please consider moving the July meeting to the morning, having an event in a midsummer's afternoon on a Sunday, for many of us who have families, is actually a real imposition. And I think that many deputies would rather, now that we're in lockdown and doing meetings online anyway, and people are not travelling, I think it would be wonderful to hold the meetings in the morning rather than give up our Sunday afternoons, which are meant to be spent with our families, at board meetings. So a completely different issue, but I would urge you to look at that one too. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I want to make it clear that I absolutely agree with Laura that I do have concerns about how Black people are treated generally. I'm not sure initially how far we can take into stage one with the Commission, but I absolutely agree with you that that would be a good stage two, and the board really wants to play its part in society because this really does matter. And personally, I'm a lawyer that has given my professional work to dealing with discrimination, and I absolutely support this commission, which is very, very important to our community, and we all feel very strongly. I'm so sorry that I cannot hear everybody because we are running very, very late. So can I give apologies and call Ella Rose, and then after that, I'm really sorry. I'm going to take a note of people who haven't been able to speak, and then I'm going to make sure that you're given priority next time. So I want to say I'm very sorry. Ella.
We've seen in this meeting specifically a lot of people talking about all lives matter, and I actually find it a really offensive phrase. You know, I think what Adrian and Laura have said has been really important in terms of, in the past few years, we've asked other communities to be really careful on how they talk about anti-Semitism, and that clearly needs to be the same. Adrian's example of the houses and the metal he used there is really important. Given some of the things we've heard different deputies say today, can we potentially look at having unconscious bias training all deputies, because it's, to me anyway, quite clear that a lot of deputies don't understand the issues around Black Lives Matter, why language is important, and why people are specifically asking for Black lives to be taken seriously in terms of police brutality, the Black attainment gap, and all of the other disadvantages that people of colour are facing in this country. So can we take those steps before maybe the Commission, which is an incredibly good thing to do? Can we make sure that us as deputies have the tools to be able to scrutinise and examine the Commission properly by doing unconscious bias training? Thanks.
Thank you. Can I thank Ella for that? Because I think that that is really, really important. We do need training, and that's one of the outcomes that there's going to be from the Commission, but I think it needs to come sooner rather than later. And I think that is a very, very good contribution. And I'd like to thank you all for that, because that you're absolutely right. You're in the right place, and the community's got a lot to learn. So this is the beginning of it, and there are sensitivities. And I'd like to thank you for giving the support to the Board of Deputies to have this commission, because this is a very, very important piece of work that we really feel passionately about, that we have to play our part in society. So I apologise. I'm so sorry to everybody else that I'm not able to call. I'm now going to move on. I'm going to ask Ben Crown to address us in relation to the organisational membership proposals as part of the Constitution Review Group, because it's very, very important. That was also part of my manifesto pledge, that we overhaul the board's constitution. And I want to make sure that we're online to do this, and we still have some way to go. So I want to say thank you. If you can talk, Ben's going to talk to us for 5 minutes, and then we've got allotted up to another 25 minutes if there are questions. So thank you all for your questions, and apologies that I couldn't get to all of you. Ben, and could you please put on your video and give your constituency? Thank you.
Can people not see my video?
Yeah, thank you.
You can, yes. So Ben Crown, I'm the Deputy for Lamud, but I'm here in my capacity as chair of the Constitution Working Group. I will be very quick today, so we have as much time as possible for questions and discussions. So, as I mentioned last meeting, Constitution Working Group has been running now for sort of a year and a half. We spent pretty much the whole of last year talking through organizational, legal, membership issues, internally, and with the input of the F&O, the CE&I divisions, and the HOs and exec. Those went out in February for consultation. Thank you everyone who responded to consultation, either by completing the survey, by providing written responses, by actually calling and having conversation with myself or another member of the working group. Since then, obviously, we've had a chance to absorb everything that comes back. There was an open meeting a couple of weeks ago, so an informal meeting which deputies were invited to between plenaries, where we had a chance to discuss some of this further. And the working group has now come back with a revised set of proposals, which were sent to you last week with the rest of the board papers. I will just very quickly summarise that. I want to make the point first of all that these are obviously just a summary, that as and when we have done enough of the constitutional work that we are able to draft memonarts and rules and other legal documents, they will of course all come back to the plenary for line by line review, for this further discussion commentary. What we're looking for today is just to explore these revised proposals that we're putting through and get a sense of how deputies sort of feel about them. So we started off with our initial remit was just to update the membership rules based on where the community is now compared with where the community was when the rules were last drawn up. The current constitution was drafted in the 90s, and a lot of the membership criteria from them were brought in from the 1970s. And before that, there's very little provision in the current rules for admitting organizations and not synagogues or rep councils. That at the moment, the constitution only recognizes membership-based criteria if you have a subscription-based membership, which is quite rare for organizations. Otherwise, there are some very loose and ill-defined criteria which sit with the Constitution Committee to sort of define. And so we've sort of been through and we tried to make rules which are first of all clear and fair, rules which are consistent across the different types of organizations, rules which are sort of reasonably generous in terms of giving established community organizations a straightforward path to board membership. They tick some pretty straightforward criteria, go through a trust board, go to a plenary, but also to safeguard against entryism and against fringe groups and against sort of troublemaking entities who aren't really part of the Jewish community but might want to make a bit of fuss by putting an application. So what we essentially have are three categories of membership going forward: synagogues with denominations, local rep councils, and other organizations. There are specific criteria for each of these in terms of membership, which are mostly brought forward from the previous constitution and have just been tweaked in places. Those are, so as you see in the details of the proposals, we've added sort of a category, various criteria for membership for organizations who do not have a subscribing membership. There's criteria based on turnover. There's criteria for youth groups or for new groups which don't necessarily have charitable status. There's a provision that groups which are not based in London and are so therefore smaller to have special criteria applied to them. And then there's discretionary power for the trustees to propose membership for an organization that doesn't necessarily tick any of the terms, but which they think is important to being part of the board. And the overwhelming, the most important criteria to mention for all these organizations, like I said, you have to be a shul, you have to be a rep council, you have to be a denomination, or you have to be an organization which is, quote, beneficial to the interests of the community and should be represented by the board. So that's the baseline that now applies to all organizations who want to join the board. We are adding as well a role for the trust board, that doing the registration process is not just a tick box exercise, that the trustees have to look at an application, reach the conclusion that the organization is beneficial to the community, does reach those steps, does reach those criteria, and then pass it to a plenary where there is a plenary vote. Because we've added these extra stages for organizations which fit our criteria, we have proposed lowering the current threshold, which is a 2/3 majority plenary for some organizations, but not all, to a straight line, straight majority for organizations which meet these criteria, and for discretionary membership, which is where none of the formal criteria are met, but the trustees' view, the HO's view is that they should be given membership, then the threshold is 2/3. And in addition to, as a safeguard, we've added, which doesn't previously exist, a provision for removal, where we're still working out the details, which will involve sort of a large plenary vote, probably 2/3 or maybe even a 3/4 majority, and the involvement of the trustees as well. And we think that between those steps, we've caught a balance between updating, between facilitating membership for organizations which the board would like to join them, and for protecting us against entryism and against sort of threats from organizations who we would not want to see included in the board. And I think the proposals here Obviously, we're happy to discuss them in detail, which we'll do in questions. And as and when we proceed to getting a formal written legal document, they will be built out into sort of binding legal language. So I think that's all I have to say for the moment. I thank everyone who's sort of contributed so far to our discussions. I'm very happy to take some questions, and then as the questions come in, I may bring in some other members of the working group to answer them as well. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. There are some questions, and I'm going to give priority because one person, Irene Mansfield, had wanted to ask a question before, and I was very sorry that I wasn't able to ask. So Irene, could you ask Ben your question, please? Could you unmute, Irene? I think your camera's off, or we'll have to move on otherwise, but I really want you to have the chance. Aha, thank you. Could you put your video on if you can? Otherwise, don't worry, ask your question. Thank you, Irene. Well, we can't hear you, unfortunately. I'm going to have to go on to the next person. If you can unmute yourself. Oh, if you've unmuted. No, you haven't. I will have to come back to you if you can work out how to unmute yourself. Paul Jacobus, would you like to ask Ben your question? And we'll try and come back to Irene. Paul.
Yes, hi, thank you very much indeed. Ben, thank you very much for presenting the new objectives. Could you explain how we're going to give guidance as to what beneficial into the interest of the community means, noting the disagreements we're having at the moment on what beneficial to the interests of Israel means, the open debates we're having there?
Thank you. Ben?
Oh, sure, yes, I mean, it's criteria which is necessary judgmental, but it's judgmental and up to, first of all, the HOs, the trustees who will see it in the first place, and then to a majority of deputies. We were looking for wording which would be future-proofed, which could sort of, which wasn't tied to a very specific time and place that could serve for a long time. We were looking for wording which could mean different things to different people, but which sort of defined where we felt the important purpose of the board's membership was, and of involvement in the board should be. And then ultimately we've left it in a discretionary way to deputies to decide how to interpret that. But like I said, the wording in the constitution will be robust enough that if deputies were to decide an organisation wasn't beneficial to the interest of the community or shouldn't be represented to the board, and that was sort of a majority vote or that was an HO vote, then we would not be open to legal challenge on the basis that we had unfairly applied these criteria. And we'll get sort of the legal advice to confirm that the wording is fine. The wording is at the moment in the current constitution for a very small subset of organisations. So we think it's robust, but we will get sort of a final view on that.
We absolutely will. I mean, that was a really good question. I think we have to perhaps accept that a lot of people, perhaps young people, for example, are not always members of synagogues, and there's lots of people that can't be members of synagogues but could be members of other Jewish organisations. When we want to make sure that we are in a really inclusive Jewish environment, and we don't want to find that people who are Jews who want to contribute are excluded. I think that's the intention, so that we really are a representative organisation and fit for purpose. But I do think that was a really good question. Could I take the last question, because we can't unfortunately get Irene's mic to unmute. Rick Cooper, and then we will, thank you very much, be moving on to divisional reports. Rick, please, could you say your name and constituency?
Hello, Richard Cooper, Portsmouth and Southsea Hebrew Congregation. What Ben didn't mention, which is on the last paragraph of the paper on the CWG, which has been sent all to us, which is the board is not an attempt to create a one Jew, one vote body which proportionately mirrors the demographic and distribution of the community, and it's necessary to have some possibly some underlying overlap. Now, John Mann reminded us that we are the parliament of the Jewish people, and it seems to me that if you are just riding roughshod over the idea of demographic representation. You're doing a disservice to us and our position as the board. You are just riding a coach of the horses through the whole objection to entryism, and you're going to let entryism happen. And this hasn't been addressed at all. Could you address it, please? Thank you.
Okay, so I think that's sort of 2 points, so I'll take them one at a time. I think we can push the metaphor of a Jewish parliament a little bit too hard. The idea it's a place where we all get together, we discuss things, it represents the range of views in the community. I think I wouldn't want to push the the idea that we should be, like I said, one Jew, one vote, very much further than that. The board already has individual synagogues, denominations, which are collections of those synagogues, local rep councils, a range of other organizations. If someone, for example, is a member of United Synagogue Shul in Birmingham, let's say, then and goes to Lamud, then they are represented by 4 or 5 organizations. That's before you even think about things like JLM, like youth movements and so forth. So there's always been this tension in the board between, on the one hand, trying to represent the biggest range of views, and on the other hand, trying to have some balance of to allow for different sizes of organizations. And we do that with having more representation for larger organizations, having a wide range of people for UJS and so forth. But I think there is like a pretty stiff limit to the point where you can say, well, we are a parliament, so we should elect people in exactly the way that the House of Commons does now, for example. As for the point about entryism, I mean, I apologize, I'm just repeating what I've said before, but I feel we responded to the issue around entryism by having the clear criteria that organizations must be beneficial to the community and represented on the board, by 2, inserting the trustees, the HOs into the process. So a membership application is no longer just a pro forma stamp, but is a policy decision taken and endorsed by the charity trustees. And then we are retaining, as now, the idea of a plenary vote to confirm or reject. The ultimate decision still sits with deputies. There's no way an organisation will be admitted to the board unless it's acceptable to the majority of deputies and the trustees, and unless they meet these criteria, which are wide enough to work when we need them to, but also will protect us if we want to deny entry to someone.
I think that's very important, that deputies do have the final say. And in my view, where you have very large communities, I personally understand why there are more deputies. But at the same time, we want to make sure that in the future, as we're looking 15, 20 years ahead, that if people are involved as Jews through other organisations, that they're not excluded, but deputies are going to have the final say. There's no way that anyone is suggesting that organisations should be submitted otherwise. I was going to ask Ben, do you want to tell us what the next steps are on now? Because that we would just like to know how.
Yes, of course. So there are 2 other issues which we said we would bring to this plenary, this specific one in June, which because of time constraints and the range of other things going on, we've not been able to. Those are, 1, an updated and revised version of the working group's proposals on the trust board and an advisory council structure which we proposed to replace the current exec and HO system. That needs a little bit more time to be worked out in full. We would hope to have that for deputies in advance of the next meeting. Then there were some various detailed proposals in relation to divisions and so forth, which I think we would like the plenary to discuss if there's time. And then at some point we will need to have a meeting where we can actually, before the meeting, we will give the deputies paperwork substantially further in advance than the papers usually go out for meeting, to see the proposed new memo and arts, proposed corporate documents for both entities, and that will need a formal confirmatory vote. There are issues about doing that, as I think we discussed at the last meeting, around doing that virtually. The Constitution doesn't have a provision for a binding vote to be held unless it's physical. I'm in discussions at the moment on it. It's possible, for example, that we could have a 2-tier plenary where there are 30 people physically in a room, so we are legally quorate, but it's done as a Zoom session. I think these are options we're exploring. It seems unlikely we will get all that done in the next 4 weeks for the next plenary, but if there's an option to have an extraordinary meeting in August, then we might take advantage of that. Otherwise, the first week in September, I think we will aim to have.
So just to explain
that,
deputies in the wider context, we still have to have a vote on the changes that are going to be put forward. We've got to overcome some of the concerns in the Constitution, because when it was written years ago, there wasn't provision for live voting or emails. So Ben's just drawing that to your attention. So these are the steps on the horizon so that we can change the membership and the structure of the board. I just want to check with Ben, do you want an indicative vote of anything today, or did you just want your opportunity to give an update? Because
I mean, I think if it's not a problem, and I think we've only had a couple of questions, I think there is wording for a question on exactly the same lines as the one we asked last time, but with membership instead of
would you like to then say what you would like?
If you wouldn't mind, I think that would be good. And then
so can I just apologise?
Get that confirmed.
Ben is going to now propose what he wants for an indicative vote, and then I'm going to ask deputies if they can respond. There's going to be a poll that's going to be launched, and can I apologise, but only deputies can respond. So Ben, would you like to ask your question, and then I will arrange for the poll to be launched for everybody on screen.
I think the word of the question is, do you approve in principle the Constitution Working Group's proposed reforms to the board's organisation and membership? Question mark. So as presented here in the summary paper, which will then turn into legal documentation.
Just to be summarised then, to make it clear for deputies, you're going to be asked, do you agree with the proposals? In principle, it's just an indicative vote that have been put forward. If you're not sure and people vote no today, we can give you a better explanation, and there's still time to do that, and we've got to come back to you anyway. But if deputies are able to, could they please respond to the poll? And I would like to ask, here we go, here is the poll. So would you like to vote, please, if you can?
Oh no, I can't vote because I've been made a host. So if you just add one to
fine
to the yes side.
I can't vote either. Okay, I can actually give you a vote. We haven't had as many people voting. 81% have said yes, but I can see from that only 77 people have voted. So what that indicates to me, thank you very much for that, Ben, is that we need to give a bit more explanation to the deputies that are on the call, because we've got a lot more deputies on the call than 77, but that's still very, very useful. But from that, I've taken that we do need to do just a bit more work to explain the options. And can I say thank you to Ben, because he's been doing a huge amount of work with the Constitution Working Group. This really is not an easy task. And I really want to say that we're very, very grateful. So we will bring this to you, and we may well have also another separate meeting. So it's very important that our Constitution is fit for purpose. So thank you very much for that, Ben. Thank you. I'm very grateful. Can I now come on, please, to the divisional reports? Could I ask Amanda to go first, followed by Sheila, Stuart, and Edwin? And if you can be, apologies, as brief as you can, because we're slightly overrunning, that would be appreciated. And I will still ask the questions because I can see everybody on the screen. So Amanda. Amanda?
Yeah, sorry, I was muted. I should have known better. So thank you, everybody. I commend to you my report. I just want to draw attention to the input we've made around social media that sort of builds on the point that John was talking about earlier in the meeting, where he feels that there's a lot more to do in terms of responding efficiently to anti-Semitism on the internet. And over the last month since we last met, we've had several meetings on lots of different fronts in terms of dealing with both the online harms bill and the importance of taking the opportunity of responding to that, as well as talking to parliamentarians, to the social media owners, and to civil servants on a whole range of issues. I'm not sure there's time in this meeting, but you'll also see from our report and from the President's statement issues around religious freedoms, and in particular our response around coronavirus and around the work that we've been doing, sadly, around deaths within our community and more broadly with the Black and minority ethnic communities around their response to the COVID-19 pandemic. And we will continue to work hard with government to understand the issues relating to the virus and its impact on minority communities. And also just to make the point that following the change in the law around organ donation and our consultation with the religious authorities, we welcome the new organ donation system, and our next steps are to work with the denominations and to ensure that the Jewish community is aware of how both to navigate the new system, but also to understand what the new system is and how it works. Thank you. I'm happy to take questions if there are, but I'm conscious of time.
Thank you very much. There aren't any questions, but I do want to put on Deputy's horizons that there was concern, and I'll come back to it after the division report, that the poll was cut off prematurely due to a technical fault. So I'm probably going to ask everybody after Amanda if they wouldn't mind re-voting. So I'm going to really apologize for that. So if you've finished your report, there are no questions. I want to thank you, Amanda, and thank you for all the work that you've been doing. It's very appreciated. So apologies due to the technical fault. Could the poll please come back up on screen? Thank you. I'm not going to touch it. Could you please re-vote? I'm very grateful to deputies. Okay, it's going up. We've had 103 voting now. We're up to 105 voting. Okay, thank you very much. That's great. We can end the poll, and I'll give you a final. Thank you very much. Right, so the final outcome, 106 people voted, which is 84%. It's roughly the same. I think that still indicates to me that we need to do some work on it, because that means there's still quite a few people that are not voting. So that's important to me that we get more information out. So I apologize for having to rerun the poll, but thank you very much. Thank you. Sheila, could you present please your report? Thank you. Sheila.
Thank you, Marie. Thank you. I'm here, everybody. Good afternoon. Last time I wasn't able to present because I got thrown out. This time, I'm here and it's good to see everybody. So thank you for Marie for the opportunity, and thank you everybody who's done so much hard work virtually, all the meetings we've been having. Talia for presenting such an amazing report. I'm proud to present it. Hopefully everybody's had it. And very happy to take any questions. I would just allude to what Marie said about an extraordinary or an extra plenary. It would be a formal debate with the motion going forward, where deputies would have to register, and anybody who wanted to speak would have to be sort of let us know beforehand. It would not be live streamed, so just a little bit more flesh on those proposals there. Okay, so happy if anybody wants to ask any questions through Marie. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we've got Anthony Bolkover. Would you please like to unmute and say your name and constituency, please? Thank you.
Yeah, hi, Anthony Bolkover, UJS. So on the matter of the proposed plans by the Israeli government to apply civil sovereignty over parts of Judea and Samaria, the board has rightly pledged not to take a partisan stance either way on this issue, but rather to remain neutral and to facilitate the debate from all sides. I understand that the board's leadership have met virtually with the youth organisers of the petition against the so-called annexation. So in the interests of fairness and for promoting the board as an inclusive and pluralistic body, willing to listen to the diverse range of opinions that such an issue like this provokes within the community, will the board's leadership also be willing to meet with a coalition of the many young Jews who have alternative perspectives, either those who support the extension of Israeli sovereignty and would like the board to do so also, and also those who have their own personal views on the subject, but don't want the board to take a side publicly? Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to pass this to Marie in a moment for her comments, but I would like to say that if we have an open debate, everybody will be able to speak, you know, to take things offline and have meetings. We are very happy to meet with the young people who had constantly been in touch with Marie, and we wanted to speak with them. But I think as recognising that the board is a place where people can air all their views, to have that opportunity rather than separate meetings all the time. Marie, I don't know if you want to add to that.
We're absolutely open to meeting people with other views, but can I just say, if there are any people that do have views that are unacceptable, for example, people support the Kohanis, people that really are not palatable, that I'm afraid does fall into a different reason. But absolutely, the board is very happy to meet people with very different views, but there still always have to be red lines, whoever you meet from whatever side of the floor. So can I just say to Sheila,
yes.
We've got three people.
Okay.
We've got Irene Mansfield, if you can unmute, and then we've got Ben Lewis, who wanted to ask a question before, and Rob Sassoon. So Irene, if you can unmute quickly this time, we're happy to welcome you. I think we're going to have to move on. Ben,
if Irene wants to email me offline, I'm very happy to take her question.
Ben, we tried. Ben Lewis, please.
Hi, Ben Lewis, Reform Judaism. Thanks to Sheila and to her division for their report. When it comes to Israel, I think some of us seem to be labouring under the illusion that the board has never taken any position on for or against policies of the Israeli government. I think it's possibly best that we not pretend that is the case. But we've been asked to focus on what the community can agree on. So that's what I intend to ask about. Obviously, there's a new ambassador incoming. No doubt you'll be having meetings with her once she's appointed. She seems to be surprised that the policy of the board is determined and approved by deputies and not by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Israel. Could I ask that we make that clear, that the board speaks for the deputies that are members, and that rightfully we are a democracy, as we've said many times in this meeting. And also, could I ask if the international division has had any conversation about the recent remarks from the Mayor of Jerusalem, who, when asked whether reformers, which should be taken to mean anyone from a non-Orthodox background, should be entitled to pray at the Western Wall, he indicated that he didn't approve of this, even though he also indicated that he knows the site is holy for all Jews. Could the board make representations to the embassy to say that we are fully in support of the rights of all Jews to pray at the Western Wall, and that it is holy to all members of the Jewish religion? Thank you.
Thank you.
So, can I just say, sorry, Sheila, just know that myself and Gillian Maron have actually raised this with Mr. Netanyahu personally. So we've already done that when we went to see him. Sorry, Sheila.
That's fine. Thank you, Marie. And secondly, working with the new ambassador, we are the Board of Deputies of British Jews. We are democratically elected. You know, she will meet with us, all being well, and we will make the position very clear that we basically are an organisation that is, as I say, democratically elected, and we represent British Jews who have views, and we look forward to a fruitful and productive relationship with her. I hope that answers your question. Thank you.
Sorry, Rob Sassoon and Mary Rainier Lee, and then we shall be moving on to the next report. Thank you. Rob.
Thanks, Marie. Rob Sassoon, Spanish and Portuguese Jews congregation again. I just wanted to check I heard something that Sheila said, that I heard it correctly. You said that if we do have this additional plenary meeting that it won't be live streamed. And I just wanted to check why that was, given that we have previously agreed that all plenary meetings should be live streamed. And indeed, one of the reasons for this is to ensure that the board remains as open, as transparent and inclusive as possible. Remembering, of course, that we are all deputies elected to represent our respective communities' views. And if our congregants and our constituents can't hear what it is we're saying, how can we be seen to be held accountable by them? Thank you.
Thank you, Rob, for your question. So if I can explain that when we looked at this proposal, I actually drew up a sort of a risk assessment to our community, and it's actually our next speaker, Mary, who pointed out the damage that could be done to the community if the views of individual deputies were known, and the possibility of leaks, which may well happen anyway. So we have decided, in the interest of protecting the board, and our deputies, that they should be able to speak openly, that we would not live stream this. And of course, you, as a very capable deputy, are quite capable of going back to your community and explaining what went on, rather than them be able to see every speaker's views. I hope that explains it. Thank you. Mary. Sorry, Marie.
Oh, sorry, Mary Rainier-Leake. Thank you.
Very small point. If somebody is going to talk to Netanyahu about who can pray at the hotel, could you mention the word women?
Thank you, Mary.
Short and sweet.
Thank you. I'm not personally having conversations with Prime Minister Netanyahu, but when Gillian and Marie get the opportunity, perhaps it will come into the conversation. I can't give that undertaking. Thank you. And Marie, I don't know if you want to add anything.
No, I'm just looking on the screen, so deputies will have to forgive me because this is the first time it's happened. I can see that someone is raising a point of order on the screen, but I can't see who it is. So who is raising the point of order? Would you come forward, please, and take your microphone off? Otherwise, you might have pressed it by mistake. I'm looking at the no, which is the red circle. It's got a number 1. Okay, it's now got a number. Okay, well, I'm just going to have to move on then, because I can't see who it is. So you could have come forward. You don't have any other questions, so thank you very much for that. Can I just trying to pick up whatever feedback I can in between. One deputy asked, and I think this is a very good question, could we please know in the future if we're going to be asked for an indicative vote before hearing about it in the meeting? And I think that's actually a very good idea. And of course, we will be giving a survey straight after this meeting, because we always want to get better, and we're doing the very best that we can to take on board all of your views. So I want to say thank you for that. I can still see this point of order showing, but I'm sorry I can't see who it is. But Sheila, thank you for your report. I'm sure that we're going to hear a lot more about the issues, and I'm sure some of these will be taken offline. And Rob, thank you for your question. Stuart, please, could you present your report?
Thanks, Marie. I'll be very quick because I know we're under time pressure and there's some really important issues that might still come up. The report that was circulated really summarizes the position fairly neatly. We are in a somewhat better place in terms of where we think we're going to end up for the year and going forward, given what's happened with the crisis, than we thought was going to be the case about a month ago. Our forecast deficit, which has been reviewed by the HOs as well as our audit working group and also seen by the executive, is coming out in a place about 50% better than we thought would be the case. Equally, our reserve does not look like it's going to need to be touched this calendar year. In fact, for quite a while, if at all. This is a benign outcome in terms of the reforecasting exercise. We have succeeded in finding savings, many of which are around things that cannot happen. Others are things that we can defer. We didn't have much fat to cut at all anyway. but I must ask deputies, wherever it's within their gift, to help us on the income generation side of the equation. Please check whether the communal contribution is being collected at all by your organization. And in some cases, your rep fees are still not paid. And that's really not very helpful. But benignly, it looks like we're not in quite the difficult position that we thought we would be. I'm happy to address any questions, but it's probably easiest to deal with them offline, very open to being approached.
Okay, thank you. I can't actually see any questions, so thank you for that. Another question that's come up in between for our survey will be to ask what time are we going to have the plenary meeting next time? And there is a last minute question. There we go, Stuart. We do have a last minute question from Doris Schmetterling. Could you please unmute, please?
I think I'm unmuted. Can you hear me?
Can you put your video on? It's a very nice butterfly.
I'll try. Because
don't worry, move on. Please say your name and constituency.
It all went funny. Okay, I can't see anybody. But anyway, this is Doris Schmetterling, New West End Synagogue. Question is about the money. I know from the United Synagogue, and I suspect the other synagogue organization will be in similar positions, is that the full economic consequence of this pandemic is not known yet. So I don't know if you can hear me, but it's frozen. So will there not be consequences after all, serious consequences for the finances of the board?
Okay, Dory, that's a very good question. But if you read the report and the one from the last board meeting, we have captured that situation precisely in both reports. And the message I was trying to convey was that the situation is somewhat more under control than we feared a month and 2 months ago. We are still projecting a pretty substantial shortfall in income this year, but it is not quite so serious a position as we feared. If anything, it's only half as bad, and we're not likely to have to touch our reserve. But of course, we have taken absolute account of the situation and reduced our forecasts in terms of how much income we can bring in, Dory. I would encourage you to read both reports and come back to me with any questions beyond this meeting.
Thank you. I think that David Sello has got a thumb up, so I think he wants to ask a question. If he doesn't, I apologise. Do you, David? If David doesn't come in, then I know I've got that wrong. No, okay. I'm going to move on. Stuart, thank you very, very much for your report. Could Edwin please present his report? Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. I'm delighted to present a packed report, and even more delighted actually because when we assembled it went over 3 pages, and then it was deemed to be too long, and we had to cut a whole page. When in times of budget restrictions and lockdowns, to have so many to report on is a fantastic pleasure, and it's a testimony for not only the division's work, but of course supported and backed by a fantastic staff. I particularly wanted just to mention 2 things here. The youth engagement, one to actually, it's a groundbreaking young steering committee, and I wanted to deny heading it or doing anything other than facilitating it. And from now on, actually, they have the full authority to come up with an engagement policy, including a full plenary run by young people. This is part of the pledge of our team, Marie's manifesto, but all the team, we're actually doing very well, ticking all the boxes and fulfilling all the pledges, and I'm delighted to be one of that team. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions? Yes, okay, so can Jeremy Michelson, could you please unmute, say your name and constituency, followed by Sally Strauss. Thank you.
I think am I unmuted?
You are indeed. Yeah. Welcome.
Yeah, Jeremy Michelson, Manchester Great New and Central Synagogue. It's not really a question, Edwin. It's really to thank the board, thank the honorary officers for listening to the needs of the regional deputies. When I first became a member of the board, deputy 5 years ago, people said to me, "What are you doing that for? You know, they're London centred. They never listen to people from the regions. You know, why are you bothering?" Well, I think you proved them all wrong by appointing Sara Radovan in a permanent capacity as in the regions. You've shown that you've listened to the feelings of the regional deputies assembly and council. That we petitioned you both persistently and patiently, and we put our point of view, I hope, cogently, and you've listened to us. We look forward to working with Sara very much indeed. She's done great work in the short time she's been with us in what was a temporary position, and we know that we deputies will now regional deputies will step up to the plate, and we will make sure that we work together with her, linking up with the board nationally, and with also with each other much more locally as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And those who came to the division saw that a combination of Sara Radovan, Lauren Kalis, Vice Chair Andrew Gilbert, and Ed Horridge. Between them, we literally, the board is reaching every corner of the United Kingdom, including communities a size of 10 or 15 people. And that is a legacy we will leave for the next team. Thank you very much, Jeremy, for mentioning that.
Sally, thank you. Sally Strauss. Can you unmute, Sally?
That better?
Thank you.
Yeah. I attended the recent meeting, and first of all, I just wanted to mention how much fantastic work is being taken during this period of lockdown. As Edwin himself has said, the reports are limited to 2 sides. And this is actually a slight problem because actually there was something missed. I want to congratulate Sarah Perlmutter, the Education Officer of the board, who's been elected to the board of the Religious Education Council of England and Wales. I understand that Sarah has been furloughed due to the current situation, but I hope this won't mean that she misses any meetings. It's very important that there is a Jewish representative on the REC board, particularly with the move towards religious education and worldviews. In the current situations, little RE is being taught, and even before lockdown, I understand that Judaism is being sidelined in many agreed syllabuses. RE in school is really important, as often anti-Semitism and racism of all sorts is due to ignorance. I also hope, on another matter, that the forthcoming commission will also talk to Jewish children who are Black, or as you describe it, of colour.
Thank you very much, Sally, and I'm very delighted that you made it. I asked you asked about that, and I said to you, please make your point, and thank you for doing it, and thank you for joining the divisions whenever you can. Very grateful. I'm done.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I don't think Edwin's got any other questions. So there was a lot of things to discuss today, and it really does show how important it is that this is a forum we can have great debate. And I want to stress, as it was also one of my election manifesto pledges, to absolutely support the regions. And we were delighted to be able to have Sara Radovan join us, and being based in Manchester. And my very first day was actually in Manchester and not London. This has been a really difficult experience worldwide and for the Jewish community in the global pandemic. And one person that I really would just like to speak before we close, as it is important to the community. We have had now, we know 497 deaths in the community, and David Katz has done a huge amount of work for us in this pandemic. Could I just ask if he's online, if he would just come online just to speak to us about this and medical examiners before we close? Are you there, David? Okay, it doesn't look like I'm going to be able to get to David, but I just wanted to say on these figures, it's 2.5 times higher the general population for Jews, which is 0.4, so that's 1% of the population, and that has been a very difficult time. And I'm really proud of how we've come together, the whole community, how we've rallied, we've spent time with each other, we've connected. And I don't know about you, but we've really, really worked incredibly hard during this time. We've worked together to face the challenges, and we've become connected through technology. And so much of you have put lots and lots of time into helping others. And I'm just very proud of everything that we've done in very difficult and challenging times. And I want to thank you for all the work that you're doing, and thank you for being deputies and all the hard work that you do. We will have a survey after this. We always want to try to do better and to listen to what we're saying. And I'm very sorry. I've got a couple of people who now want to speak, but I'm afraid we're going to have to draw it to a close. And can anyone write in if they've got any questions? We'll try to take them offline, and apologies for people that we haven't been able to get to today. But I want to say how great it is that we've had a chance to see you. And I don't know if we can end by potentially all unmuting and trying to have a nice wave, so we can all just try and connect and have a big wave. That feels so nice to. I'm just looking at
everybody.
Bye. Marie, thank you very much.
Thank you, Marie. Thank you,
Good to see everybody.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Stay well.